So we've heard the stab wounds or the sharp force injury wounds described as gouges and wide open gouges and sorry, bit of hair on the phone there. And here we see Kathy Mabbott said, as you can probably remember the interview, each victim suffered multiple stab wounds from a pretty large knife to their chest and upper body. I don't think we heard anything really about puncture wounds, did we? I mean, I think they've kept it pretty tight so that, well, they tried to anyway. So the only leakage we've had is about larger wounds rather than smaller wounds, right? So I'm thinking about the sort of motivation of the stabbing, and actually Steve Gonsalves described it as this guy note, not these guys. At this time, nobody was in custody, but he decided that it was one guy in his mind for some reason. This guy's real sadistic, he said. Now, I wonder is it because of the size of the wounds that he thought that? What was it that it might just to be a word that came out with because it was so horrifying, but sadistic does imply something somewhat different. So I don't know what that would be, and without that information, this is speculation without all the information we need. But nevertheless, here goes the speculation. So I also was watching one of many. I can't remember if he was a pathologist or no, he wasn't. He was another one of these FBI profilers, talking about perpetrators. It can be a sexually motivated attack because the satisfaction of the stabbing itself is like the can I just say, just anybody who is in any way related to these victims, just don't listen to this. I wish I'd said that at the beginning of all my videos, but I would have thought that I wouldn't have thought families were following any of this. Hopefully not. But now I've lost what I'm saying. Oops. So the knife is basically a metaphor or a symbolic or replacement for the phallus, basically. So the penetration of the knife is like the penetration of the phallus. So somebody apparently, but however, having said that may be true, but usually there would be, I'm going to apologise for being so graphic here, but there would also be ejaculation because this person is getting off on this so much. I mean, I know some people would say, oh, well, he was interrupted. I don't know. Who would really go into a house of 6 people in it and take the chance that somebody might wake up and find them ejaculating? I mean, never mind stabbing people. I don't know. People, like I heard Lana say, she said it well, that stalkers isolate people. They don't go somewhere. They choose victims who are, they're less likely to choose a victim who's got so many friends and is in they choose people who are already somewhat isolated or quite isolated. They isolate people. They marginalised. They choose more marginalised people, potentially. And they would more likely, they could attack in a public, well, not public, but public as in not the house, not public as in lots of people around. I mean on public lands, somewhere when they're out and about, just like Lana said in her video yesterday. And that is typically serial killers. There's not that many of them that enter houses, and especially not these days. They more likely abduct, but the most recent one of those possibly could be that I can think of is Israel Keys, and he did abduct as well. But he also tied people up. He also had guns. He never went to houses where there were dogs. He never went to houses where there were children. He'd never have gone to a college house. He's not mad. He's sadistic, sick. He was sadistic and sick, but he was not unintelligent, put it that way. So this is about Piquerism in homicide, a knife wound analysis of a sexually motivated serial killer. Sorry, I just need to check that I've got my microphone on, because sometimes I've done a whole video and realise I haven't got it on, and it's difficult because sometimes I need it on and sometimes I don't. I won't bore you with it, but I'm just explaining. So it will explain, I think, in the article what Piquerism is, I would imagine, so I won't start explaining that. So abstract, as part of a wider research project into paraphilic disorders and homicide, a case is presented of a Piquerist. Oh, marvellous, please just pull up right now with your music. Who achieved sexual satisfaction through the infliction of stabbing wounds against a background of sexual domination with willing and unwilling sexual partners. The offender stabbed 4 men to death. Now, I don't know if we've only got the abstract. Oh, God damn you, we have. I should have checked that first, shouldn't I? Might have to find some more. Anyway, we'll see what this bit says. A study of the resulting autopsy results in association with the offender's testimony and crime scene documentation was undertaken to discern a Piquerist crime scene signature. So we'll look that up. An excessive number, this is basically what it is, an excessive number of stabbing wounds, the targeting of sexual areas. So these were all to the upper body in the Idaho 4 case. They're all to the upper body. Now, your sexual areas aren't all in your upper body. And apparently this is a sexually motivated crime, according to some. They're not even saying, the police are not saying what the motivation is. But if he doesn't know them and it's supposed to be stalking, then sorry, but that's what the motivation is, whether you want to say it or not. You don't want to pin it down because you probably know there's no evidence of it being sexually motivated. An excessive number of stabbing wounds, the targeting of sexual areas, and a variation in wound size and depth were found to be evidence of Piquerism. Although there was opportunity to commit a sexual assault upon victims, the preference was to penetrate them with a knife. It is contended that, even without any evidence of sexual assault at a crime scene, a knife wound analysis can reveal a sexual motivation in some cases of homicide. But you have to do a knife wound analysis. It just being a knife is not enough. There needs to be an analysis of the pattern of the wounds. And Piquerism is shallow puncture type wounds, and not all shallow wounds, I don't think. But let's look at it further. I know that's part of it. Let me see. Okay, we're going to look at a few of these just to get more of an overview of what Piquerism is and sexually motivated knife crimes that involve knives, basically. Sharp force injury attacks. Signature crime scene behaviours such as Piquerism. This is from researchgate.net. So you can see. Here we go. The Jack the Ripper murders, a modus operandi and signature analysis of the 1888 to 1891. It's interesting to know what years. God, was it over? That's quite a long time. Oh, no, it's not. It's my maths again. It's only 3 years. Well, actually, that's probably more than I realised. Okay, here we go. I've missed this bit. A number of females, commonly recognised as 11 victims, were murdered in separate events in Whitechapel, London between 1888 and 1891. Over a 3-year period, don't you know? An evaluation of the murders revealed that 6 of those murders were linked by a number of distinct personal signature characteristics, including Piquerism, overkill, incapacitation, domination. That said in something about, no, it doesn't matter, I'm going to continue on, and control, open and displayed unusual body position, sexual degradation, mutilation, organ harvesting, specific areas, maybe it was all to do with organ harvesting, specific areas of attack, pre-planning and organisation, and a combination of signature features. The signature characteristics observed in these infamous Jack the Ripper murders were compared to a 1981 to 1995 cohort of 3,359 homicide cases from Washington State HITS database. The analysis revealed that the signature displayed in 6 of the Whitechapel murders was extremely rare. There were only 6 records of female victims, one a prostitute with probed, explored or mutilated body cavities. There were only 2 cases, both female, who were not prostitutes, where the body was left in an unusual position and body cavities were explored, probed or mutilated. I think this was an organ harvesting type thing. Well, I don't know. I'm talking about the Jack the Ripper ones. Signature crime scene behaviours such as Piquerism or other behaviours such as the insertion of foreign objects into the cavities of victims or posing of the corpse are born of the killer's deviant sexual fantasies, which form part of his sexual arousal. Specific indicators of Piquerism include posing of the victim's body, sharp weapons used, overkill injuries, ante-mortem mutilation. So that's obviously that's before, isn't it? Not during. Well, yeah. No, what am I talking about? Yeah, before death. Before death, mutilation rather than post-mortem. Where have I gone now? And torture. Post-mortem mutilation. The location and severity of stabbing and cutting wounds, such as the genitalia. So shouted genitalia out the window virtually then. Move away from the window. The presence of which can indicate or discount a Piquerist signature. The most well-known example of Piquerism in homicide is contended to be that of Jack the Ripper. Special indicators of Piquerism include posing of the victim's body, sharp weapons used. I've just read that, haven't I? Are these all from different? Widely known to have killed a minimum of 5 women in the Whitechapel area of London in 1888. All victims were killed with a knife. In varying degrees, all victims of Jack the Ripper were cut, stabbed and sliced to the extent of evisceration. What's evisceration? I know that word. Hold on, let's just double check what evisceration. Evisceration. Surgical technique by which all intraocular contents are removed while preserving the remaining. So, internal organs taken out, isn't it? Oh, an evisceration is the removal of the eyes. Well, I heard ocular, but I didn't realise it was to do with anything to do with eyes, leaving the scleral shells. Well, what's his name? Richard Ramirez removed eyes. The procedure is usually performed to reduce pain. Okay, it's evisceration. Oh no, there's different kinds of evisceration. We've got pelvic evisceration. I think we're just talking about removing organs here. Pelvic evisceration, a radical surgical treatment that removes all organs. Evisceration is removing organs, isn't it? This sounds like it was an organ harvesting exploit. Maybe made to look like murders, I don't know. However, overkill injuries such as those displayed by some victims of Jack the Ripper are not a necessary characteristic of Piquerism. Even a single stab wound can substantiate a diagnosis. How can a single stab wound? If the person inflicting the wound was sexually aroused by the act, and arousal to such behaviour is persistent. Oh no, you're not going to tell us the rest. I think they're going to say that I'm going to say it again, the word ejaculated. So if there was like evidence of ejaculation, then otherwise you've got, what evidence have you got if you've just got one stab wound and you not necessarily going to know what their motivation was. Okay, we're not going to read the Spanish version. Let's see what else we have got here. Here we go, a knife wound analysis. You know, just lately, you only get the abstract. I've noticed it more since flipping COVID. I swear to God, everything has just got shitter since COVID. Piquerism in overkill crime, homicides. We don't know if there was overkill, but we'll see what they say about Piquerism. Piquerism, the sexual gratification yielded from the infliction of cutting, stabbing and slicing wounds. Okay, so I thought it was more like sexual gratification, but it was more like puncture kind of wounds. I think it can be, but it looks like it's not, definitely not limited to that. Remains an under-researched sexual paraphilic disorder with consequences for understanding, identification, detection, case linkage and offender treatment. To help remedy that research deficit, a detailed case analysis, the Ripper homicides, All right, we're back on the Ripper. See if there's anything else in here then. Surely they've got something more up to date than that. In existing research literature, the comparative to a Ripper killing are those homicides which involve overkill, while the term features in a number of studies investigating homicide. It remains somewhat loosely defined, in part at least owing to the lack of empirical evidence. Okay. Well, we don't know that there was any. This is talking about overkill. Oh, hold on. Let's look at the Yorkshire Ripper. But I think he used a hammer, didn't he, more than anything? The case that follows is that of the Yorkshire Ripper. That's who I'm talking about. Used a hammer. Peter Sutcliffe, in UK, Yorkshire, England, in the 70s by the looks of it. Yeah, 75 to 80. The year I was born, 1975, this maniac started. But he, I believe, was schizophrenic. He was certainly in psychiatric prison. Because there's one near where I used to live, and he was in that one for a while. Luckily never escaped. Let me read on and stop waffling. The case that follows is that of the Yorkshire Ripper, a series of at least 13 homicides and 7 attempted homicides committed by an offender over 5 years in England between 75 and 80. 1975 and 1980 specifically. The brutality of the crimes shocked the nation as well as police, but pivotally, that brutality masked a Piquerist signature. The failure to recognise that signature, I just want to have it, just pops into my head. Sorry, I just need to pause here. I just don't want to spread, because I have mentioned schizophrenia a few times, and I think most of my audience are intelligent enough to know that schizophrenics are not all violent. Schizophrenia, how it presents in different people, can vary dramatically, and I completely, 100%, and this is from working with people with schizophrenia, it is completely out of those people's control, exactly the same as dementia is in the elderly. And in fact, it was originally called dementia precox, as in a young person's dementia. So I don't think it is actually that different from dementia. It's just that obviously younger people are more capable. I mean, it's not a terminal condition, obviously, and younger people are more capable of more damage if it's not recognised. But yeah, I think it's got a lot of similarities with dementia. And if you think of dementia, you would not think of those people as being responsible for their actions, for their behaviours. I've worked with people with dementia as well, and they can come in and out of a different world, basically. I mean, it's not the same, but it's similarities, and they're both diseases of the brain. It's not a mental, it's not psychological. Sorry to preach to the choir. I probably am preaching to the choir here. I can tell by people's comments that there's a lot of intelligent people that listen and that watch my channel, so apologies. I just want to make sure that I'm being clear, because I don't know, it's just something that would upset me to think that I could I don't want to further give the impression of people with schizophrenia as being dangerous. There's obviously that possibility, and that's why medication is so important, really important. to the point that people are a different person on medication, and I've seen it. Right, sorry for that little interlude. I know some people get irritated by that, but I feel like I really want to point that out, and I don't always think of these things in time, and so I'd rather say it than not say it. While most investigators will never encounter a sexual homicide, those that encounter such a homicide with overkill injuries are likely to miss a Piquerist signature hidden beneath the brutality inflicted on the victim. In particular terms, misinterpretation of the motivation for mutilating wounds may hinder efforts to identify perpetrators, as in the following case. Indeed, don't tell me I've got to... It is, sorry, indeed it is. Where's that? For those reasons that the case has been chosen to demonstrate Piquerism in homicide cases, displaying overkill and the difficulty in identifying a Piquerist signature in such cases. Oh, I'm tapping read full article, it's not doing anything. God damn it. You're kidding me, that's so annoying. Everything, they've changed. Honestly, I'm so frustrated with COVID. Everything has become so expensive now. And now you can't look at research as easily as you could before. They'll just show you the introduction and then make you pay for it. And I'm really fed up with it. I'm going to moan about going shopping yesterday. And I just can't believe the price of things. It's just staggering, and they want people to be healthy. The health service are having a real focus on trying to encourage people to be healthy. Well, how about they help people to be healthy, because the price of healthy food is extortionate. Sorry, it's got nothing to do with Piquerism, but I couldn't help it. It just burst out of me. This is called criminalprofiling.com. Anatomy of a lust murder from 2001. Lust murders are homicides in which... Now, who are they quoting here? Doesn't say. Okay. Lust murders are homicides in which the offender stabs, cuts, pierces or mutilates the sexual regions or organs of the victim's body. The sexual mutilation of the victim may include evisceration, piquerism, displacement of the genitalia in both male and females, and the removal of the breasts in a female victim, defeminization. It also includes activities such as posing and propping of the bodies, the insertion of objects into body cavities, anthropophagy, consumption of blood and or flesh, what's his name, Dharma, and necrophilia. Lust murders are predicated on the obsessive fantasies of the offender. It is not enough for these type killers just to kill. They have a compulsive need to act out their fantasies with their victims and their victims' bodies. So my point is, as I made before, but I just want to reiterate in case anybody's missed it, that they're talking about the stab wounds and mutilations being in the sexual regions, and the stab wounds were all in the chest area, implying that either, I don't know if they were all in the chest area, but that's all Mabbott tells us. And it's very hard to believe anything she's saying or anyone else is saying, to be honest. So we'll just take it all with a pinch of salt. But that would imply straddle position on somebody or standing, basically, to have hit somebody in the chest. And that does not, that we can't really derive any sexual element from this, from what we know so far, to be honest. It is not enough for these type killers just to kill. They have a compulsive need to act out their fantasies with their victims and their victims' bodies. This would be the signature component of the crime. A psychological perspective of the development and effects of deviant fantasies and behaviours can be found in the psychosexual disorders, specifically sexual sadism. Now, what's his name? Steve Gonsalves said this guy is sadistic. This is before he even knew it was one guy. Well, presumably before we knew anyway. But what I want to know, is that just a word that was used? Because I've felt before that Steve Gonsalves has been made to look like this person who's challenging the police, when actually behind the scenes he's not. He's just challenging them because, just as if he's doing the job so nobody else has to, basically. So it would keep the public and satisfied, basically. Big Steve's there challenging, but then I think that some things that he says help the prosecution, like the sadistic, referring to it as sadistic, and him saying about gouges and things, that's creating horror, and it's getting people whipped up into a bit of a frenzy. So, and we all know, once they've got somebody, if the crime is heinous enough, then no matter who that person is, the whole nation, in fact the whole world, hates that person because of the nature of the crime. Think about the West Memphis 3. Think about, I'm going to give you examples of people who were found innocent and people who were found, people who were also found guilty. So think about Casey Anthony, think about Amanda Knox, and I think it's also if that person is from another place. So Amanda Knox was not from Italy, so she's public enemy number one. He's not from Coburg, is not from Idaho, he's not from Washington. You know, you found somebody who's not only apparently done these heinous crimes, heinous. Why can't I say it today? Suddenly it sounds weird. And not only has he supposedly committed these horrifying crimes, but he's also not from round here. He's a stranger. He's from other parts of the world. He's not local. Who else have we got? We have got we've got the Central Park Five, who were wrongfully convicted of raping and brutally attacking a jogger in Central Park. Turned out to be somebody else. But, uproar. She was a blonde-haired white woman who was a professional. She wasn't a marginalised person. She was in some respectable job, some sort of, I don't know if she was, I can't even remember if she was working, or I think she was. You know, she was some kind of professional type. And so, we call it middle class, you call it upper middle class. No, I think it's different class system, really. So if it's a woman, a white woman, if it's a particularly brutal attack, and at the time it's to do with race and that, there was, this was one of those cases that the nature of the case affected how the police treated these young men, and how the case went. They were so incensed. The police were so angry and incensed and disgusted, and so was the public. So there was all this pressure that they made rash decisions. We've got OJ. Most people think it's a joke that he could be innocent, but there's plenty of reasons to look at his son, to be quite honest. But the nature of that crime, that's more like partly the nature of the crime and the fact that both parties, particularly OJ, was famous, so that's going to play into it, and class will play into it as well. There's interest on more than two sides here, with, you've got 4 people, but you've also not only got 3 girls, you've also got a male, which makes it unusual, and Ethan's a particularly sporty male, so there's more male interest, I think, in this case than usual. Just America is quite big on sport. You guys, like I've noticed in true crime, I've seen this with a parent saying, but he was even interested in sports, when like people are like looking at her son accusingly. It's like that's a defence. But he was even interested in sports. He's not weird, He's not a loner. He doesn't just look at his computer like psychopaths do. Even though psychopaths are people who completely blend into society, but there is a real sort of sporting culture in the USA. So there's an interest when something links with a sporting figure, and you could sort of think of Ethan to an extent as representing that. He is they've tried to portray him as a very all-American boy, and maybe he is, and I don't want to cast shade or anything, but they keep putting pictures, the media keeps showing pictures of him when he was younger and when he was more fresh-faced. And I don't know if that's just to create more sympathy, or because his appearance later is less sympathetic. I don't know why they keep picking, or if they just like to, the media just pick the picture they think is the prettiest. I don't know. But they have made that decision, and it's not just one media outlet, it's many media outlets. Continuing on, obviously another public figure. So this isn't so much it's how shocking the crime was, how public the crime was, and heinous actually, because the top of his head was blown off. So although it's gun and not a knife attack, it's public, and he publicly lost the top of his head. It's pretty horrific. And yeah, so this guy, who knows with that, but he was roped in pretty quick, wasn't he? He's never had a trial, but we've decided he's the killer, and I'm not sure that should happen when somebody hasn't been tried. Here you go. To me, he was a suspect. And I mentioned the West Memphis 3. If any cases to do with children, but particularly a case that is this egregious, like what was done to those 3 boys, and then the condition that they were found in, which confused things to make it appear even worse than it actually was. To the 3 younger boys, obviously I'm referring to, and then what's done to these boys in the end. But this case was completely tried in the media, and there is still, I've seen documents and things on this. Jeremy Bamber, White House Farm, they recently created there was an ITV drama which misrepresented it. It wasn't accurate, and I might in the description put a link actually to a website where you can get a more balanced view on what happened, and it's got all documents and things on that website. And interesting because this guy was very quickly and he was basically nail in the coffin because his girlfriend, who he just dumped, as in just dumped before she decided she was going to shop him, she told the police that he had planned it and had planned to get somebody else to do it. And to be honest, I could buy that somebody else did it, but I find it harder to buy that this guy did. But I still find it hard to buy, to be honest, to an extent. And that goes against what almost all of the UK think, because it's just been tried in the media. They only know what they've been told in the media. They've decided before he was ever tried. Same as with the Koberger case. So how can you get a fair trial? How could any of those people who've made their mind up before the trials started, how can anyone be on a jury? A jury is even a good idea. Like, there's talk of the what sort of a benefit professional juries might be, and I agree. I think they're just pulling the wool over people's eyes, and they know that they can. I can't remember what else I was going to say about that, but I will put it into the description. And then Wayne Williams, there was uproar in Atlanta at the time because lots of black young boys were going missing, and it was horrifying. The community was terrified. Parents were just, God, I can't even imagine what they went through, those parents. But that seemed like it was a big operation, to be honest. And this guy might have been a pedo or a perv or whatever, or he might have been part of it, but I very much doubt he was the sole participant in that whole thing. In fact, there's even sort of there's even evidence of sort of white nationalist Ku Klux Klan. I'll have to try and look it up for you because I don't want to give you the wrong information, but some involvement there with some specific members of the Ku Klux Klan in that area. But I will try and make sure I put any information that I'm alluding to into the description, and I will always try and do that, and if I don't, you can always ask me for it. I'll mention Casey Anthony, and obviously there was, people decided straight away that she was guilty. I don't know, her story did change a lot, but I do not know what on earth was going on there. I have read the other book, actually, and I think it's worth reading. It's always worth reading the other side of the coin, I think, and that's not something I used to do, but I actually find it fascinating now to read both sides, and it can be very enlightening. So I will probably put the title of that book into the description, and obviously John Benet Ramsey. Now, Imagine if they had somebody for that. That person would be strung up practically. I mean, that person would not have got a fair trial, especially not at the time. So, because they would certainly be public enemy number one against children. That has if it's a heinous crime, if it's against children, if it's a sexual heinous crime against children, if it's a sexual heinous crime against a child that's practically a celebrity and is white and is girl and is blonde, and I'm not saying that to have any judgment on white blonde girls, we're all born how we're born, but it's the people consuming the information and the people putting out the information to the public that are to be held accountable for that. And then 9/11, I mean, can't get much more egregious than that one, really. Well, you can actually, because probably just as bad things has happened in other countries, and we've probably not batted an eyelid about it. But that's not to diminish how horrific this was. But if the president said this is Al Qaeda, then straight away, the heinousness of that crime, there's no question, everybody believes it. Whoever he'd said had done that, we would have automatically believed that was the case, and straight away, everybody hates anybody associated with that group of people. So anybody Islamic was public enemy number one then. So, people, it's the heinousness of a crime, the egregiousness of a crime can have a lot to do with whether people, public interest, and whether people decide immediately that the person that the police have identified as being responsible, immediately people think they've got the right guy, no question. Immediately people hate that person. They hate that person's face. They want to rip their eyeballs out and any other balls off.